I went to adopt a puppy, a small golden retriever, simple, easy. But I walked into the wrong section and saw him. This massive Rottweiler, over 45 kilos, just sitting there behind the glass, staring at everyone who passed by. He wasn't barking. He wasn't moving. He was waiting for something that would never come. And in his eyes I saw a reflection of my own heart, broken and waiting. What if I told you that this dog was more than just a stray waiting for adoption? What if I told you he could teach me how to heal when I thought I'd never be whole again? 6 months had passed since Trevor left. The silence in my apartment was deafening, a constant reminder of everything I lost. They told me time would heal, but it felt like the days only grew heavier. My therapist kept recommending the same thing. Get a dog, Claire. Something to care for, to pull you out of this silence. I thought I had a plan. I wanted something small, easy to manage, a companion to fill the void without demanding too much. I'd been looking at golden retrievers for weeks, gentle, friendly, easy to train. It was a simple decision. But when I walked into the animal shelter that Saturday morning, my life took an unexpected turn. I filled out the adoption papers for a puppy, but fate had other plans. A woman named Rande guided me through the shelter, past barking puppies and eager dogs. But it was the quiet one in the back, sitting still in a kennel, that caught my attention. This massive Rottweiler with dark, soulful eyes sat motionless, staring into nothingness, as if waiting for something, or someone, that would never show. Rande explained he'd been there for weeks, not eating, not playing, just sitting. "We have to make space in 2 weeks," she said. "He's not adoptable, but maybe you could take a look." I couldn't explain it, but something about his gaze, that deep, unwavering stare, reminded me of my own emptiness. It felt like we shared the same pain, the same waiting. I never meant to adopt him, but as I stood there, watching him wait, I felt a strange connection form. Could this be the sign I needed? Could I take in this dog, this lost soul, and help him find peace, just as I needed to find mine? The shelter was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the outside world. Dogs barked in the distance, their excitement and energy reverberating through the walls, but it felt like there was a different kind of stillness in the back room. I followed Randa down the narrow hall, passing the younger dogs that bounded and jumped in their cages, their eager eyes pleading for attention. Each one was a bundle of energy, their barks competing for attention, for love. But as we reached the farthest end of the hall, the noise seemed to dissipate. There at the end of the line was the Rottweiler. His massive frame was practically swallowed by the cage. He was sitting completely still, his fur a mix of black and tan that looked faded and tired. His eyes, deep and brown, were locked onto something beyond the glass of his enclosure. He wasn't barking. He wasn't even moving. He was just waiting. I stopped in my tracks, my heart doing a strange flip in my chest. This wasn't the puppy I came for. He was massive, old, and in his eyes there was something haunting, a quiet that felt so deep it echoed in my bones. For a moment, the noise of the other dogs seemed to fade into the background, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breath, the quickening pulse in my chest. "That's Bear," Randa said, her voice quiet, almost reverent. "He's been here for weeks now. No one knows why he's like this." She glanced at the dog, then back at me. "He doesn't eat much. He doesn't play. He just sits there waiting. He hasn't moved for days." The words hit me like a punch in the gut. Waiting. It was all I'd been doing for months. The divorce, the silence that followed, the endless nights where I stared at the door as if willing Trevor to walk through it. I hadn't realized how much I'd been waiting until that moment. I thought a dog would fix things. Something small, something that wouldn't demand too much of me. But here was Bear, a creature as broken as I was, waiting for something that would never come. Randa took a few steps closer to the cage and lowered her voice. "He's not adoptable, you know. He's 9 years old, has arthritis, and his meds cost a lot. But we're running out of room if no one takes him soon." She didn't finish her sentence, but I didn't need her to. I knew what she meant. Bear had 2 weeks left. 2 weeks before they would make space for another dog. 2 weeks before they would have to make the hard decision to put him down. I stood there, staring at Bear through the glass. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my presence. His eyes were still fixed on the wall, as if there was something beyond it he was waiting for. Something that would never come. I tried to move, to turn away, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. The noise from the other dogs, the excitement, the pleading looks, it all felt so far away now. Here in front of Bear there was only quiet. Only this heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to wrap around me like a blanket. The silence in my apartment had been the same. A void I couldn't escape. It had been 6 months since Trevor left, and every day since had been an exercise in just surviving. I had no idea how to live without him, no idea how to fill the emptiness. The silence had become my constant companion. I avoided it, buried it in work, in routines, in the hope that if I kept busy enough I wouldn't have to face it. But standing in front of this dog, I felt it again. The silence, the waiting, the brokenness. I turned to Randa. "What's his story? Where did he come from?" She shook her head. "We don't know. He came in about 3 weeks ago. He was found wandering the streets. No collar, no ID, just this." She gestured toward him. "I don't think he's ever known real love." Her words stung more than I wanted them to. He didn't know love. I didn't know love anymore either. Not the kind that made you feel whole. Not the kind that made you feel safe. I knew I wasn't ready for another person in my life. I wasn't ready to open myself up to anyone or anything. But in that moment I didn't need to. I needed to help him, to be present for him. "What happens if no one takes him?" I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Randa sighed. "We'll have to put him down. We don't have room. He's not adoptable." I didn't know what was wrong with me, why I felt like I couldn't just walk away, why I felt like this dog, this massive, broken creature, had a hold on me. Maybe it was the way he stared at the wall. Maybe it was the way he seemed so lost. Maybe it was because I saw so much of myself in him. "I'll take him," I said, surprising myself. "I'll take him home." Randa blinked, clearly taken aback. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I replied. "I'm sure." I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I knew I couldn't let him wait alone in that cage. I couldn't let him spend his last days waiting for something that would never come. Not when I knew how it felt to wait. Randa smiled softly, relief washing over her face. "All right, let's get the paperwork started." As she led me toward the office, I took one last look at Bear. His eyes were still fixed on the glass. He hadn't moved. But for the first time since I walked in, I thought I saw something in his gaze. It wasn't hope, but it was something, and that was enough for me. The first night with Bear was nothing like I imagined. I had prepared myself for the typical chaos of a new pet, puppy energy, barking, pacing. But this was different. Bear was still, almost too still. He didn't explore the apartment, didn't sniff around, didn't check out his new bed. He simply sat in the corner, staring at the door, as if waiting for it to open. I sat on the couch, my mind racing. Was this the right decision? I had only known him for a few hours, and yet something inside me told me that he needed me as much as I needed him. But how could I help a dog that didn't want help, a dog that seemed to have given up on living? I glanced over at him. His massive frame seemed small in the corner, his eyes locked on the door. The silence between us was deafening. I wanted to reach out to him, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what he needed. I stood up, walking over to the kitchen to prepare dinner. It was a routine I had done 1,000 times: chop vegetables, sauté them, cook pasta. But tonight, the simple act of cooking felt like a ritual, a way to ground myself, to remind myself that life could still be normal, even when everything felt broken. Bear didn't move. He didn't react to the sound of the stove or the smell of food. It was like I wasn't even there. The night passed slowly. I ate in silence, staring at Bear, who remained in the same position. He didn't eat the food I placed in front of him. He didn't even acknowledge me. It was like I was invisible, like I was trying to connect with a ghost. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come easily. My thoughts were a tangled mess of worry, doubt, and guilt. What if I couldn't do this? What if I couldn't help him? What if I was just as broken as he was and neither of us could fix each other? The silence in the apartment was overwhelming, but it was also familiar. I had lived in this silence for months after Trevor left. The emptiness, the stillness, it had become a part of me. But tonight, with Bear in the corner, it felt different. It felt heavier, more suffocating. In the dark, I could hear the faint sound of Bear's breathing, slow and steady, but his body was rigid. His eyes were still fixed on the door. I thought about what Randa had said earlier, about how Bear hadn't moved for days, how he was waiting for something that would never come. I wanted to believe that Bear could heal, that we both could. But the truth was, I didn't know how to fix him. I didn't know how to fix myself either. Just to mastit up the next morning, I woke up early, the sun barely peeking through the curtains. Bear was still in the same spot, but something had changed. His head was slightly turned toward me, his eyes finally meeting mine for the first time since I brought him home. For a moment, neither of us moved. It was as if we were both trying to understand each other. I reached out tentatively, offering my hand to him. "Hey, Bear," I whispered, my voice soft and unsure. "Are you hungry?" Bear didn't respond. He didn't get up, but he didn't look away either. His gaze stayed on me, and for the first time, I thought I saw something shift in his eyes. It was as if he was considering me, weighing whether he could trust me. I slowly stood up, grabbing a bowl and filling it with food. "I'm here, okay? I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. I placed the bowl in front of him, but he didn't make a move toward it. I sighed, sitting down beside him, keeping my distance, but staying close enough that he could feel my presence. I knew he was scared. I knew he was hurting. I just didn't know how to make it better. For hours, we sat there in silence. I didn't push him to eat, didn't try to force him to move. I just stayed with him, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd understand that he wasn't alone anymore, that he wasn't waiting for something that would never come. As the day wore on, I began to notice small things. His ears twitched when I moved around the apartment. His eyes followed me, even though he remained still. There was a slight change in the air, a shift that I couldn't explain but could feel deep inside me. Bear was starting to see me, starting to recognize that I wasn't a threat. By the time the sun began to set, Bear had eaten a little. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I felt a small spark of hope inside me, a flicker of belief that maybe things could change. Maybe Bear wasn't beyond saving after all. That night when I went to bed, I didn't feel the crushing weight of silence like I had before. Bear was still in the corner, but he wasn't staring at the door anymore. He was resting, his body a little less rigid, his breathing a little less shallow. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time, I felt like I was doing the right thing. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have the magic fix, but I knew one thing. We were in this together, and that had to be enough for now. The days began to blur together as I settled into a new rhythm with Bear. Mornings were quiet, the only sounds being the soft clink of his collar as he moved around the apartment and the occasional sigh from him, heavy with unspoken thoughts. We were still learning how to coexist in this strange space. He, an old soul with a broken past, me still picking up the pieces of a life I hadn't expected to lose. Bear's progress was slow, but it was progress nonetheless. Every morning, I would wake up to find him in a slightly different position. Sometimes his head was turned toward the window, watching the world outside. Other times he would shift on the floor, adjusting himself slightly as if he was trying to find comfort in a world that hadn't given him any. It was small, these changes, but they were there. He was beginning to trust the space around him, and I was beginning to trust myself with him. But still, he didn't engage much. He didn't seek me out for attention. He didn't play with toys, didn't wag his tail when I called him. There was still that emptiness, that quiet waiting. And yet, as the days passed, something shifted in me too. I began to notice the little things that kept me going. Bear's eyes would follow me across the room now. If I stepped into the kitchen, he would lift his head slightly, as if he was curious. It wasn't much, but it felt like a bridge, a connection that wasn't there before. I wasn't sure if he was seeing me as a person or just another part of his environment, but either way, it was progress. I made sure to talk to him every day, even though he didn't respond. I would say things like, "I'm going to the store now, Bear, be right back," or, "Hey, buddy, I'll be in the living room if you need anything." I spoke to him like I would to any other pet, even though I wasn't sure if he was listening. It felt silly at times, but it also felt necessary. He was here, in my life now, and if I was going to help him heal, I needed to be here for him too in every way I could. One afternoon, as I sat on the couch working on a new logo design, I felt a soft weight beside me. It was so slight, I almost didn't notice at first. But then I turned my head and there he was, Bear, lying down next to me. He was so close that I could feel his warmth radiating into the small space between us. His body was still, but his presence was different. For the first time since I brought him home, he wasn't just sitting, waiting. He was here in this moment with me. I froze, unsure of what to do. It felt too significant, too intimate for me to move too suddenly. But then, as if he sensed my hesitation, Bear shifted slightly, leaning into me just a little. His head rested against my leg, and I could feel his breath warm against my skin. I reached down tentatively, my hand hovering for a moment before making contact with his fur. The moment I touched him, he didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. It was small, but it was everything. Bear had chosen to be close to me. And for a moment, I wasn't just the woman who had adopted a broken dog. I was the person who was there for him, present, real, and willing to help him heal. I kept my hand on him, softly petting his head. He didn't respond, didn't nudge me for more attention. But it didn't matter. This was progress. For the first time, Bear wasn't just waiting for someone or something else. He was here with me, and that in itself was a breakthrough. That night, after we'd shared our quiet dinner, I went to bed feeling something I hadn't felt in months: hope. It wasn't the grand kind of hope that screamed for change, but the quiet kind that settled in your chest and made you believe, even for just a moment, that everything might be okay. As I lay in bed, I thought about how much had changed in such a short time. I had gone from being alone, surrounded by silence and emptiness, to sharing my space with Bear, this old silent dog who had his own share of pain. And while I still didn't know what the future would hold for either of us, I knew that for now we were helping each other. The next morning, I woke up to something new. Bear had moved again. He was no longer lying by the door waiting. He had made his way to the window, his large frame blocking out the light as he sat, watching the world pass by. It wasn't much, but it was a change. For the first time since I brought him home, Bear seemed to be living in the present moment, not the past. I got up and walked over to him, crouching down so I was on his level. "Hey, Bear," I whispered, my voice soft but warm. "You're doing great, buddy." He looked at me for a moment, and I swear for just a second I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen before. It wasn't just emptiness. It wasn't waiting. It was acknowledgement. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to believe that he wasn't alone in the world anymore. I stood there, my hand gently resting on his back. It felt right, this moment, this connection. We weren't fixed, we weren't healed, but we were in this together, and for the first time, I believed that was enough. The days that followed were full of small, quiet victories. Bear began to move around the apartment more, his steps slower but more purposeful. He would wander from room to room, inspecting everything with a new curiosity. He still didn't play with toys, and he didn't wag his tail at the door when I came home. But there was something different about him now. It was as if he was starting to understand that he wasn't waiting anymore. He was living. We settled into a routine. I worked during the day, Bear lying nearby, always present but not demanding anything. In the evenings I would sit on the couch and he would curl up at my feet, as if finding comfort in simply being near me. We shared quiet moments together, moments where words weren't necessary. It was as if we both understood that sometimes just being there was enough. One afternoon, I decided to take Bear for a walk. At first, he was hesitant, unsure of what to do with the leash or the unfamiliar sense of the outside world. But slowly, he began to relax. He sniffed the grass, walked alongside me, and for the first time, I saw a small glimmer of joy in his eyes. It wasn't much, but it was progress. As the weeks went by, I began to realize that Bear wasn't the only one healing. I was too. The silence in the apartment had softened, replaced by the gentle sound of Bear's breathing, his occasional sighs, and the rhythm of our days together. I had started to live again, to feel again. Bear had shown me that healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting it, about being present, and about allowing yourself to move forward. One night, as I sat on the couch with Bear resting beside me, I realized how far we had come. I no longer felt the weight of the silence that had once consumed me. I no longer waited for something to change. The change had already happened. We had both found a way to move forward, together. Bear had taught me that sometimes the most healing thing we can do is simply be there for someone else. To show up, to sit quietly, to offer our presence without expecting anything in return. In doing so, we heal not just the other person, but ourselves as well. I don't know what the future holds for Bear and me. Maybe he'll always carry the weight of his past. Maybe I'll always carry the scars of my own. But I do know this. We're not waiting anymore. We're living. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not alone. And that's the story of Bear, the dog who was waiting for something that would never come, and the woman who learned to stop waiting and start living again.